Today we're going to discuss how to develop a devastating freestyle kick, and the strategy we're going to use is extreme stroke count swimming. So the importance of the legs. In freestyle, the legs are really key. They help swimmers establish a great rhythm by helping swimmers transition from side to side throughout the stroke cycle. The legs actually help flick the hips over and the shoulders over, help the rotational rhythm. They obviously help with speed as well, creating propulsion from the lower body. They also improve body position by kicking down a little bit. It helps pop the hips up a little bit. And then they also help with alignment, especially lateral alignment. So if you ever see a swimmer kick the legs out to the side, that's a compensation to help keep their hips and their torso in line because of some other action in the stroke. And while that's an obvious error, the alignment's being maintained with subtle small kicks that aren't quite as big, and that happens throughout the stroke. And as every coach knows, when the legs go in the race, everything falls apart. It's for all these reasons, because the rhythm falls apart, body position falls apart, the alignment falls apart, and then as a result, speed falls apart. And these might not be dramatic changes, but it's enough that it can cost swimmers races and it can cost swimmers best times. And so the legs are key for speed in freestyle. Some common pitfalls in developing the legs in freestyle. So kick sets, they absolutely definitely develop physical conditioning of the legs. There's no question about that. However, they don't necessarily develop the coordination needed to integrate the legs into the stroke. It also doesn't develop the conditioning to sustain that coordination over the stroke. And so sometimes it's not always a physical issue with maintaining a certain skill. There's a skill involved in maintaining the skill. So athletes need to learn how to do that. Kick sets aren't going to help with that. Kick sets also don't develop arm and leg conditioning. And what I mean by that, it's one thing to condition the legs when they're working independently and all the blood's just going down to the legs. It's something else to develop the ability to use the legs as you're swimming and as you're using the upper body as well. And so that takes another level of conditioning, and that involves kicking hard while using the arms as well. The other potential issue with instruction is that a lot of times coaches will just tell athletes to kick more. And that doesn't necessarily force a change, and so swimmers are going to be resistant to doing that, especially when they get tired. Secondly, they don't necessarily learn the consequences of their choice. So if they stop kicking, it's not always clear that there's a negative consequence to do so, and they don't necessarily immediately start swimming slower or faster. Lastly, instruction doesn't really allow them to explore how to effectively integrate their kick and how to use their kick to create performance. One of my favorite strategies for solving this problem is extreme stroke count swimming. And so that's having swimmers swim with extremely low stroke counts. And so if it's short course, it could be 4 to 8 strokes per lap. You're trying to get about 5 less than normal or even more. And then for long course, they're shooting for 15 to 25 strokes per lap. Again, maybe 10, even 15 less than normal. And that's obviously going to vary based upon the level of athletes and the individuals within your group. So what you're going to do within that constraint is you're going to require them to perform. You can have them negative split, you can have them descend, and then you can have them hit certain speeds. In that situation, they're going to have to create speed with the legs because they're capped with what they can do with the arms. And creating more propulsion with the arms isn't going to be that effective because they simply aren't taking enough strokes. So they're going to have to pick up the slack with the legs. Even better, they can't just simply kick harder. They have to kick harder within the rhythm of the stroke, because if they're not efficient with it, they're not going to be nearly as fast as they could be if they start to play with how to time everything better and do things with more fluidity. And so it's a great strategy for putting athletes in a position where they have to use the legs to create speed, and it conditions the legs to be able to sustain that effort over the course of the set. And while you can start with really simple variations, and you should, it's often pretty soon that you're going to want to turn it up and make it more challenging. So how do you do so? You can integrate this strategy within kick sets, so you can alternate between kicking and super low stroke count swimming. You can do this in pace sets, again, alternating between race pace efforts and then super low stroke count swimming. You can do the same thing with aerobic sets, alternating between super low stroke count swimming and regular aerobic freestyle. In all these situations, it's going to put an emphasis on the legs and swimming with the legs using great timing and great rhythm and fluidity. That's going to challenge athletes even more when they go to the regular swimming portions of the set. You can also add training aids, so using either fins or drag socks is going to dramatically change how the athletes experience the set. You can also use a snorkel as well so that they don't have to worry about breathing. These little twists can make the set a lot more engaging, and it can also make it a lot more effective, placing more stress and more pressure on different aspects of performance. You can also change the stroke counts throughout the course of the set, And so lower stroke counts are going to have more emphasis on the legs, whereas higher stroke counts can allow for more speed. And it just adds another variable that you can use to try to move swimmers closer to faster swimming. And lastly, using a variety of different speeds can be really helpful for pushing swimmers into the area that you want and helping them work and develop skills in the areas that you want. So what does this actually look like in practice? Here are 3 sample sets that work in different contexts that all use extreme stroke count swimming to focus on the legs, develop the fitness of the legs, but also the skill of using the legs while you swim. And so the first set, you're going to descend 1 to 4 within each segment, and you're going to take 1 less stroke per section. And when you do that, athletes need to try to maintain the speed that they had in the previous segment. You're going to go through that twice, and then the second round, you try to be faster. So this is more of an aerobic situation, really focusing on the legs. The next set is kind of a pure kick set. And so the odd repetitions are going to be flutter kick with the board. And then that's going to pre-fatigue the legs. And then they're going to try to descend on the second piece, swimming with an extremely low stroke count. Again, trying to fit the legs into the rhythm of the stroke. The last set is a pace set. The odd repetitions, it's going to be extremely low stroke count swimming. And so that's going to pre-fatigue the legs, but also keep a certain rhythm to it. And hopefully that will help them have a more leg-driven stroke. And also it's going to fatigue the legs, so they have to learn how to use the legs while they're trying to hit race speed. And with that set in particular, you can add 2 strokes per round to the extreme stroke count swimming so that they swim a little bit faster and they're getting closer to race speed on the kicking part of that set. So 3 simple sets to start with, and you can kind of go anywhere and everywhere depending on what you want to accomplish using this strategy.